Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Work Session agenda for Tuesday, October 9th. If you have a cell phone or BlackBerry, if you could please turn it off and put it on vibrate. With that, members of the board, in front of us we have the work session meeting minutes of October 2nd, 2012. And if everyone's had an opportunity to read them, we'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Give a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And then also in front of us, we have the closed session meeting minutes for September 25th, 2012. And again, we'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then also in front of us, we have we have a closed session meeting minutes in the afternoon meeting for September 25th, 2012. And we'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes as written.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second? Do we have a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. And lastly, in front of us, we have the October 2nd, 2012 closed session meeting minutes. And presidents have an opportunity to read those. We'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we have the broadband activity update. Director Mesniak to the staff.
Good morning, all. I have a few things before you today. I'd like to speak on VTOP, at a federal level, then Maryland Broadband Co-op, and I have Mr. Tyler Patton from Maryland Broadband Co-op to update us a little bit for business purposes. After that, we can set him free, and then move on to the sheriff's office update if that's agreeable to everyone. The laterals, meaning the main trunk for the project, the conduit that will carry the fiber is completed. That would be underground as well as aerial. So the telephone pole fuses, et cetera, have been all approved, and most of the fiber is up as far as the main trunk. We have a couple spots downtown Elkton that are not completed yet. The stoplight, where we've seen the removal of the stoplight from the state level. Don't think that's going back up because that's required to get this broadband in. That is our final hurdle in getting the main trunk, but the laterals are beginning last week, or have begun last week. Laterals are from that main trunk into the anchor institutions. And again, that's not fiber, it's the conduit. That's the bulk of the work though. Once the conduit is in, then they can just blow the fiber through. So it's mainly pipe to speak of that fiber will run through there. Having said that, I would like to move on to a cost estimate. And that estimate is what it's going to take to get this fiber connected. We're looking at least next year's budget to do that. Cost estimate I put for round-off purposes in this presentation I gave you at $500,000. Right now it's looking closer to $450,000. That is broken down by my pie chart, and I did this as close as I could get it with this $500,000. So the total number of sites would be 48 sites, and those are listed in the pages following the pie chart. I broke down the pie chart as government administration. We have 3 sites: public schools, public safety, college, and a library. Approximate hookup for each site is going to be $10,416. 28 sites for public schools, which, looking at the pie chart, is the large bulk of the installation, public safety, college, and library. There will be a point in time where we're going to come forward, we being all of these institutions, asking for this dollar amount, or close to this dollar amount. Is my information clear to everyone that I laid out on the pie chart wall?
Are you proposing to repay for the hookup of all 47, including the state properties, including MTA and the Maryland State Police Barracks?
I am not proposing that. Actually, I have left that out. I put that in for purposes of what's going in the county, but if you look at the pie chart, the state is not included in that.
So none of the state agencies were responsible for it?
Correct.
Just county installation.
Just county installations. But I did want to put that other in there so you know that they were included in the overall project.
Scott, what about, broadband access to our road corridor? And, over the past year and a half, when the information first started coming in about what the Maryland Broadband Initiative was doing, what we wanted to do is make sure that not only are we connected with our public facilities, like our schools and libraries, public safety, et cetera, but that we have the ability to hook our businesses up to broadband in our growth corridor especially. So where is that at in terms of analysis? Have you had a chance to do any kind of fiscal analysis or geographical analysis of what it would take in terms of getting that final fiber there?
Yes, certainly we have built the fiber project, the existing fiber project, to be conducive for that type of an expansion. Wherever the fiber crosses the growth corridor, we have built-in couplers, or a connection, so to speak, so that we won't have to be tearing things apart, but instead of, we just bite into those connections. What it's going to take to do that is going to be a last mile provider company or an entrepreneur that is willing to spend that type of money to run. We have crossings that don't have maps with me today, but those are certainly available on the office should you want to look further, where we would be able to do it in segments. So in other words, we segment from an intersection 213, for example, down to 40, and so on. I'm not in any way suggesting who would be the entity that would hook up that additional fiber. I do want to mention though that Maryland Broadband Co-op would be the conduit for that type of and the only conduit using this project for that type of a connection.
So in other words, the county would work with Maryland Broadband Co-op to, as they work with the last mile providers?
Yes.
Meaning they have to lay the pipe down, which the fiber goes in.
Yes, conduit would have to be laid. And who does that, again, has to be someone willing to come along and pay that cost. When we have looked at digging on Route 40 in the past, we've done studies, what would it take to run conduit in there as well. But again, we're not to that point of anyone making that commitment yet. We've just made it so that when someone is ready to make that commitment, it'll be easy to bite into the existing fiber.
Is it possible to get a cost analysis even though we don't have those providers that are ready to step up to the plate to do that? Is it possible to get a cost estimate? Because what I'm doing is looking into the future in terms of the county being able to anticipate what those costs would be and be able to plan for those. And so I think my question is there an ability to provide those numbers to us
Absolutely, yeah.
for future planning?
Very rough, but yes.
Okay.
What's the status of the Maryland Broadband Initiative in Cecil County? I mean, as far as getting the work done.
That's a two-part question. The first part is the BTOP is the part of that, and that is required to be done by August 31st of 2013. I honestly don't exactly know what the date for Cecil County's 100% completion turn on is. It's a rolling date. It's not in the first 5 counties, so I have not seen the exact date of when that will be turned on and lit. The Maryland Broadband Cooperative, which is a private nonprofit, which was created by state legislation and to not compete with the private sector, but to help enhance what the private sector could do, we have assets here. We just signed an MOU last week to put a pop-up point of presence right out back. Drive on around. I'm not sure what we call that building out there, but the maintenance. It's like a gorgeous spot which will connect into the fiber that's being built by the state through VTOP. We have assets on 95, 213, and we have a member that we partner with, and we have a ring in certain parts of Elkton that we're working on. We're working with our members. We have 73 members of the co-op. There are ISP providers, local government jurisdictions, and one state agency to come up with what Commissioner Moore is asking for. Who wants it? That's what we get the most. Where is it? When can I get it? What's it going to cost? Need a provider to serve a business or a house or a neighborhood or insert a whatever here. And we're working with our members in this area to do that. We're also working with healthcare centers in the county to do a connection for them so they have faster speeds to process their radiation and images so they can send them to different places faster as opposed to having to use the snail mail. So that is what we're focused on in Cecil County. Like I said, Commissioner, it's a multiple pronged approach, if you will, from what we're doing as a cooperative, what the state's doing as a project, working with the county and working with the cooperative. We are a subrecipient of the VTOP grant. So everywhere that the state builds fiber on a backbone or an extended lateral, we will have access to. For better or worse, when VTOP was created by Congress, it was intended to connect public institutions. That was a policy decision made by the Congress to connect public access points, county administration buildings, firehouses, schools, departments of aging, whatever the state chose to be, but the grading criteria was based on public connections. Government speaking to government, all on the same page. Cops talking to cops as opposed to private sector. Maryland got ahead of the curve and said, you know what, we're going to do both. We think it's important to have a public sector and a private sector aspect to this grant, so we're going to give an open access to the cooperative, which is us, and then we will be the lessor of the fiber to any ISP provider in the state that joins the co-op and wants to provide access anywhere. So it could be from a large provider to a 123internet.com. It could be anybody that could come in and say, I'm going to make a business case, or I do business in Delaware, but it makes sense for me to come across the line and provide a service in somewhere else, or I'm going to do whatever. So we have providers that that's happening to on the shore, where they were serving a specific county or a smaller region, and throughout, because of the cooperative asset, they have been able to, increase their county from 3 to 4, where they're providing access, and I expect that that's going to happen here next.
Well, I remember a year and a half when me and Scott had went down to that meeting on VTOP and was really excited about the possibilities. And he was talking right away about how can we use this to incorporate into getting it in the growth area. What can we do to stimulate attraction for these companies to come here? To let these companies know that we're looking for a provider.
Sure.
I believe the biggest step and the first step that we've made in doing that is making it easy to hook in. As I mentioned, the connections wherever we run across 40, we've made it so you can plug in instead of ripping everything up and splicing, et cetera, et cetera. It's set up so that when someone is ready to do that, they can just plug and go.
But can we get information to provide to economic development
have been major conversations with, and you insert any provider that you want, we have 73 of them. I would say we're void maybe 5 in the whole state that just haven't come to us yet, or we may not have enough assets where they are, maybe thinking long-term, things like that have not joined. We talk to them every day, about where we're going, the changes that have happened in VTOP, the route changes, the EA changes, what we're building next, where do they want to go? It's a dual path. If somebody calls us and says, I want service, the consumer could call us, and we would then call providers and say, we have either a massive business client that is sitting right here in Elkton or wherever it may be, who is interested, and then we'll get 3 or 4 that say, we can do that, and then we'll come up with a plan to do it. Or we get calls from the provider that say, I want to go here. How do we make that happen? So it literally is them coming to us and us going to them and say, how do we get this done? And to answer your question, Commissioner, I think there are 3 major challenges to providing service. One is the access. Where do I connect? And how easy is it to do that? Is there a space? Is there a slack coil or a coupling that I can just connect to and make it easy, which is the easy part. The second part is each individual ISP has to make their own business case, which we can't always make for them. We do our best to say, if you use our fiber, which is already in the ground, as opposed to building your own, or going through the permitting process, or expanding, or whatever have you, that's a big part of it, is that, the internet company down the street has to make a business case to invest. If I'm going to put in X number of dollars, how many dollars can I recoup right away? Charging my $59.99 plan, or my whatever the plan is, your bundle, if you will. What does that cost me to serve, and how do I get it back? That's where the challenges that we see on a regular basis, is that the providers, have a hard time going 2 miles down the road, because that's not cheap to build 2-mile laterals. So they have to figure out how can they get that money back.
Is there any incentives that the county commissioners, government provides? Have you seen this?
I've seen it in Carroll County, where the county itself has a county-wide ring, if you will, that they let other folks use. We help them manage it, and then it's like a mini VTOP, to be honest. It connects their agencies, but if there's extra fiber, then they will let it be leased out to go to neighborhoods, which has helped. It's still, a ring in Western Maryland or on the Eastern Shore that doesn't go back to Baltimore is a tough sell, because that's where you regen, and that's where you get your fast speeds, and that's how you get everything done. But I think it's easy to do. I would have to work with Scott on sharing that information, which we have from here, which I don't think would be a problem.
You mentioned 3 challenges, and I may have missed one. You talked about access, that each ISP needs to make their own business case.
Right, the business case is the toughest, and then the third one, and this is for nobody's fault, there has to be a mass population. Enough people, or enough needed to get it done. If you're talking about a growth corridor, and I'm talking generally, when you're selling at your house, you probably have somewhere between 8 and 12 meg of internet is what your house is using. A standard house through whatever internet service provider. When you're getting up into a business case, you're talking about a gig, and that you have to have enough of those to make somebody want to go down there. And so if you have one business buying 1 gig, that's great, but is it enough for somebody to say, I'm going to invest the capital? So it's the business case plus is there a population that can make it happen?
Well, if a business comes in and they pay for the initial connection.
Sure.
And other businesses benefit from that, can there be a return? Is that?
Yeah, that's generally how it happens.
Okay.
A big anchor institution is not the right term, because that's what we use for government entities, but a big anchor is sitting somewhere and they say, I have to have this, and I have to have my own line for security purposes or redundancy purposes, or I just need it. And then, so somebody goes down there, and then they're cherry picking the rest of them that are around. So that's how we usually see it happen. One big client says I've gotta have a massive amount of use, who's going to give it to me, and then whoever goes down there gets everything else around it.
So this, the VTOP, investment, or federal investment, has forwarded us to having a whole lot more possibilities in the technology.
I absolutely think so. I mean, we have not, the VTOP is being done in segments, and the segment is a county. They're doing it by county, they're pulling the conduit, and then they're pulling the fiber afterwards. There are 5 that are almost complete, will be done by the end of this month, or the beginning of the month. And we have members that are waiting. So they're like, we know where it's going, it's in the ground, so we have an idea of what we can do with it. That's the problem. This is unfortunately, not a fast process. You know, you have to put the conduit in the ground, you have to get the permits from the feds, from the state, from the locals, from water crossings and tidal crossings to Delmar, to any power company that may be in the right of way too, that you have to flag them. It's not an easy process, to say the least. But once you get going, it starts to roll. We've been doing VTOP for what, almost 2 years, Scott?
Yes.
And then the planning before we applied for it. So it is a process, but I already believe, and I can honestly say that I think we're gonna see return fast. I think we're gonna see people say, I really want this.
Refresh my memory,
Yes,
a
ma'am.
year and a half ago, we talked about the main trunk line coming over from Hartford County across I-95. But Scott, you mentioned 40. So how has that expanded?
Well, the trunk, the main lines that feed the county will come up 95, which already existed, it's a state line.
Yeah.
And it's been there for a long time. 213 project is new, so it's coming up south of the canal and up that way. That will give us somewhat of redundancy, even though we don't have complete redundancy in the county, it'll give us redundancy for traffic out of either direction and that. So that is not a new line coming across 95, it was an existing state line that until that point had been only for state purposes. VTOP actually, when that came along, they shared the line with VTOP.
So we don't have anything on 40. You had mentioned 40 in the earlier statement.
We crossed 40.
Oh, we crossed 40,
Yeah,
okay.
With an opportunity to go
But does that
down.
give us a coupler right at 40 then?
If you want to take a look at that, there are 3 spots where that.
Yeah, 3 different places. And to further Scott's point, there were assets in Western Maryland on 95 that were being used by the state or certain agencies in the state, and then they expanded them. And are letting the counties and the private sector jump on that, which is a big win in and of itself. I mean, I understand the importance of VTOP as the whole, but being able to get on that fiber and go straight down 95 is a huge win for consumers.
For the past 5 years, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For the past 5 years, we've been trying to get into that line through other various state projects, and it just was a no-go every time we came up against it. As soon as VTOP came along, that opened up, so it is a huge win.
So if you pick up one of those crossings, then you can run that van down.
Literally, yes. Yeah.
So our efforts into forming a task force, I don't think are needed, it's more like we need to promote out
That is
there
fair.
what we have.
I think there's 2 different topics. Certainly, overall connectivity for the county business and residents, something that a close eye needs to be kept on, not just for the VTOP initiative, but for any possible connection whatsoever in the county, that be Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, down, including Maryland broadband, down the line. If a task force were formed to keep an eye on any possible upcoming event, for instance, the Verizon home fusion that is coming out is going to be a big win for the county. It's a canister that mounts as on an antenna mast, and that allows anywhere to 4G, which is scheduled or slated to be completed by the end of this year, calendar year, allows connection, pretty high speed connection into homes, and there's no reason a business couldn't use it in places where we have not been able to touch in the county prior to that happening. Now, that's providing Verizon comes through with their promise and 4G is completed by the end of the year. In any case, I think we'll see it come to fruition soon. Things like that, certainly, and that's just one example, opportunities that are coming along for the county that I see a task force looking at that type of situation. A task force looking strictly at BTOP and Maryland broadband, I think we're providing enough information where, at this point, where a task force would not really be able to extract any more information.
It would be redundant.
Yes.
What is the percentage of the backbone for your project that's in the ground and ready to go right now in Cecil County?
From BTOP or in general? We have, calling it the Maryland broadband project is tough because we are always growing and we keep adding parts of the projects that depend on where our members want to go. If I had a member come to me tomorrow and say, I want to go down 40, we would go down 40 tomorrow.
No, I'm talking about planned projects and called BTOP.
Okay.
How much of that fiber is in the ground right now?
None of BTOP is in the ground.
Right.
Actual
No.
fiber. There's conduit, there's a pathway, the fiber's not in the ground. Of the projects that we are currently working on in this county outside of BTOP, it's all in the ground.
I'm not worried about some other county. I'm worried
No.
about Cecil County.
Right, but what we're doing in Cecil County that's not part of BTOP is already there.
So none of that cable fiber is in the ground today?
From BTOP, no.
Right.
And when is it anticipated? Do we have an anticipated completion date on that?
It has to be done by August.
August 31st of next year.
Okay.
Has to be done, and it's one of these funky federal grants that doesn't say allocated, it has to be spent.
Right, but that's only 47 sites.
Well, and all the mileage in between the 47 sites, which to me is what we're.
Okay, then tell me exactly how many commitments you have with ISP providers to put the last mile in off of that backbone right now. None. That's my point. My point is there's a lot of talk, very limited availability, very limited capacity, almost no connectivity currently.
I appreciate.
And I'm not blaming you.
No.
I'm not blaming you.
No.
My point is that I know that I think that we could be more proactive in helping ourselves move this thing forward, helping you, helping others, helping ISPs, identifying needed, instead of waiting for somebody to call up, let's just say we need, and let's get these ISP people, they can put their last mile in even before the backbone is done. Why can't we do this in parallel?
Never see that happen. I mean, it's a very tough argument to say, this is coming, go ahead and pre-build for it.
Anything is possible under the right conditions and the right management, with the right people coordinating this. And I guess my comment is there's nobody in Cecil County that I know of is coordinating, directing, encouraging, incentivizing, or trying to make this happen. It just kind of happening by itself, and with your help.
Sure.
Your little piece, but I have to tell you, your little piece only really serves 47 people. 47 institutions.
My piece doesn't serve any of those 47 people.
Okay.
Yeah. Doesn't this usually occur though, after the fiber's been put in?
Yes.
And then, from what I've been told, that's when they step up to the plate, they see the, and they're looking at the numbers, as you said.
You're asking a company of small means or large means, take whoever you want, to put money literally in the ground with something that's not already there, that could come, we think is coming, but
You said it's gonna have to happen.
it has to happen, but they could change their route plan.
Okay.
They could say, the budget got tough, we're gonna put a less actual number of fibers in the ground for them to connect to. It could stop a half mile shorter than anything is possible in a federal grant, which I don't have to tell anybody sitting around this table. I don't think any of that is gonna happen, but as you said, Commissioner, anything is possible.
And I guess
So it's
it's,
the risk piece.
It is, it is a potential huge risk for anybody to come in and say, there's a housing development, or there's a business, 300 feet off where the backbone is gonna be. I'm gonna go ahead and build and hope.
I was just throwing that as
I don't-
an example.
I
I
do
was
not
not
disagree.
encouraging, I was just throwing it as an example of getting ready. And of course, in my opinion, all this effort, this fiber in the ground may become obsolete before it ever gets built and used. And I'm talking about the 4G, and I do have a phone and it has 4G, and it seems to work everywhere. I can push a button on my phone and I get my emails back.
Right.
It's unbelievable, better than I can get it at my office. It's super fast. And of course, my question is, why would I need fiber? Why would I need cable? Why would I need other, when I can, if it's done wireless, I can do the same thing in my office.
I can address that. If you,
Can you speak into the mic?
I'm sorry. If you compare that to delivery of water from the end of a hose in your garden, certainly you can go very fast with your telephone. If you want to move any bulk of water whatsoever, the more you start feeding, the more you start cranking that water up. And if you have a hose this big around, with 4G, there's not going to be enough pressure to push a lot of data. So things will slow considerably the more data you start pushing. And in a business, you're dealing
That's assuming this technology is stuck in today's
Well, and
world, and that wireless you can't make the wireless pipe bigger.
and the cell tower that is running your phone is connected by fiber. So even though your phone isn't,
I guess,
The
the
dependability.
point is, I personally am not satisfied with the availability of broadband in Cecil County. I'm not satisfied with the rate that it's becoming available to the citizens and to the businesses. And it's not, I'm not blaming you, I'm not blaming you, it's not your fault. The fact is, I believe that we can be more reactive or take more actions and get this done faster. We know that Cecil County has limited infrastructure, that's water, sewer, broadband, and natural gas. And I see natural gas going in the ground. I see it happening sooner than later. It's happening. Water is happening. Sewer, we're working on it. Broadband is a lot of talk and limited action. And I would like to speed up that process and make it more available to more entities other than just government and state agencies.
The three main carriers in the county that are posed to be potential ISPs, we were already in contact with them. Two of them have become partners with Maryland Broadband Co-op, Comcast, AT&T, Comcast and Verizon, AT&T being the other. We're certainly talking to those potential ISPs, as well as they're talking to Maryland Broadband Co-op. They've all been in contact. So just because one has not joined does not mean they have not had close negotiation. For another ISP to come along, we can't say that won't happen. But an ISP is a big commitment. It's burying or running overhead fiber to a home, as well as 24/7 surveillance of that to make sure that if something goes wrong, they're out there with the team to fix it. It's a very costly venture to become an ISP. Not saying someone's not willing to do that if it becomes attractive enough. But we are in contact with the potential ISP folks at this point. I certainly would welcome anything that would inform them more what's going on.
Is there anything to incentivize the speed of the process? Is there anything that we should be doing to speed up the process?
Well, when Commissioner Bruno mentioned incentives, that is one thing that certainly we could look at for ISPs, and that would be fast tracking. We could offer that. Any permits, et cetera, that would need to be done, inspections, so it would make it more attractive for them to, anything that we do.
Okay. One other thought, Director Flanagan, is, and I don't know if you two gentlemen have already spoken of it, Director Mesnick too, about infrastructure, are there infrastructure needs in our sewer area that would be consistent with putting in infrastructure for broadband? And you don't have to answer that now, but just as I was thinking about, clearly there's a huge cost on both sides, and if there's ability to partner and cut the costs considerably, I think we should consider doing that. I don't know if that's been thought of yet.
You're suggesting putting fiber in the same ditch as sewer, more or less? The concept.
The concept, yes. I know there's a lot of logistical aspects and technical aspects, but.
And I don't mean exactly in the same ditch, but.
Next to
Can't go.
No, I know, but what we're talking about is the design, the engineering, the right of way, the acquisition, and all that coordination so that.
It's huge, as you explained, and so if we can kill two birds with one stone, I don't know if there's a possibility there or not. And that doesn't necessarily speed up the process either, but, certainly whatever, I think having an analysis of what it takes to take it from the main conduit into, we know it crosses 40 in 3 different places, and then be able to go out beyond that in areas that we anticipate growth that would help us in terms of planning and how much that would cost, and you gentlemen are gonna take care of it.
Where to connect, to your point, all 3 of those crossings, well, if you go 1, 2,
Sure.
3, or start in the middle and go this way, or however you wanna work it.
A couple of years ago, I did look into that, where utilities were being put down and they decided to put conduit at the same time, so there are some examples out there where people have done that.
Okay, and then I don't know, I just threw that out there, Director Flanagan and Director Mesnick. I don't know if there's possibilities there, but just thinking kind of outside the box, if there's ways that we can do that and kill 2 birds with one stone, I'd like to look at it.
So that's pretty much it for this morning on that, Dean.
Yes, going back to the VTOP, the pie chart, again, just so you know, this is, I'll give an analogy on this. This is not the fiber, this is not the conduit. This is, if you look at that as an interstate that has been run, this is the ingress and the egress for that interstate in each site that Mr. Ferguson has been working on diligently.
Does this actually include the construction of the last few hundred feet? The actual physical construction, or is this just the connection piece?
It's the connection, no, it's the connection from where that fiber is dropped to the equipment, including some of the equipment that ties it into the network. A LAN connection.
Anything else? John?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
That's what we got better.
Scott, looks like you're up again for the Susquehanna Sheriff's Office Automation Technology Consolidation.
The consolidation has been moving along. One of the biggest challenges we've had at the Sheriff's Office, EMS, in the detention center is gathering facts as to what is actually there. We're still in that process. We have taken the existing 3 people in those offices and we're putting them on our ticket system. It seems that a lot of putting out fires has transpired. So getting a good snapshot of what's going on every day has been difficult for us. Once they're on, we estimate within a week, this week they will be on that ticket system. We'll be able to look at what their service calls are, route some of the calls through our help desk, and attack the problem areas. And that's as far as service calls. Their email system, we need to get that over to our email system. They currently are not running in the same system. Several reasons for that. One is sheer continuity of information. But to bring them in compliance with our document retention policies, it's absolutely necessary. I have a quote from our providers of our email system. If you recall, last year we talked about outsourcing, and it was approved that we outsource our email to the people that have been our providers of the email system, MTM Technologies, to incorporate all of the entities over there is an additional $31,000, $31,896. I would ask for careful consideration of this. Craig, Whiteford and I spoke of some of these matters, and I don't know what the procedure would be other than transferring or asking for budget amendment.
Well, amongst our conversations that we've had, they were all geared around funding. And thus far in this process, we've made arrangements to move the funding for the labor over under your immediate supervision, but at this point have not adequately identified other funding within the confines of the law enforcement, detention, work release departments that have continued to fund ongoing IT-related projects. So I believe your charge was to just try to start to decipher some of those, and that would give you the ability to fund the disaster recovery, the network diagramming, the Lotus Notes micro, and some of the other items that you've been discussing.
Thank you, Greg. As Craig mentioned, the other portion of that disaster recovery plan, currently there is no disaster recovery plan at the sheriff's office. We absolutely, it's essential that that is put into place. There's no network diagram. That is something else that is essential we put into place. We're requesting at this time additional funding for disaster recovery plan, network diagram. And that is through MTN Technologies.
Can we back up a few steps if we could?
Yes.
Help us understand what the overall plan of action has been up to this point. I know our last direction was, hey, let's look at consolidation of IT services between the sheriff's office and the county office. And I know you guys have done a lot of work since then. So why don't we start with bringing us up to date in terms of what's been done for that and where it's been determined that services can be combined and where they can't be.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start again and reiterate my biggest concern is the lack of a disaster recovery plan, the lack of network diagram, which it has been for a long time. That is our foundation for incorporating everything, as well as making sure that it's a robust system that is not fail-proof, but fail-safe. So if it fails, we can bring it back up. Until we get to that point, everything else is important.
But that's been.
So I guess the question is, what are you doing to make that happen? I mean, I guess that's the question ultimately. I think we've successfully identified some of the major issues. They were all laid out when we talked about the consolidation and the concept of it. So I guess the question is, we know that. How and when do we make that happen?
Now, we're talking about the backup for the sheriff's department data, not our own data is okay, right?
Yes.
Our own data, the county data is fine, you're comfortable with that.
Yes.
What you're not comfortable with is the data that's in the sheriff's department. It's been a problem, and it still remains a problem, and you want to solve the problem,
Correct.
and you have a solution,
I have a solution.
and you want money.
Yes.
How much?
It's the MTM. It's 31,000.
We don't have it, right?
We don't have, well, again, that was my question to Craig, and we had talked about.
This is the backup?
Yes.
I guess at the same time, there's going to have to be some coordination with the DES side. This certainly is, they're tied into the system. I don't know that that's happened.
Is there, I understand the impetus for the consolidation, as you said, your two biggest concerns. However, with consolidation, there may be cost savings.
Absolutely.
Okay, is this a possible revenue stream to fund this?
I think what he was saying up front, Commissioner, was that he's still in the discovery phase. To give it a better example is for our maintenance consolidation, our costs associated with maintenance with detention and the like were all kind of in one place. So all it really changed was their line of reporting. With regards to IT, just because of the way that it was handled, there was no special department set aside for that. So the expenses budgeted for the IT function within the confines of the sheriff, called the sheriff, but it's detention, they're in multiple locations, and we've identified those. A nice round number on expenses not associated with the labor portion of the budget is likely in the neighborhood of $200,000 annually. If this was all easily cut and dried, we would have already moved all of those dollars, even though we kicked into gear September 4, over into another area. But it's not quite that simple, because going back and attempting to identify how things had worked, that's where Scott is now, and then making the determination as to where they move forward. So we're just not quite there yet, but I believe ultimately there will be some savings there, because there will be a plan as to whether, and I believe we indicated that in this budget development process, that those savings would likely be, would not necessarily be in the first year, certainly because of things like disaster recovery that have not been accommodated at this point. And if they're identified as the priority of the fund, then that'll have to be done.
Was that your game plan, to wait a year before restructuring?
Restructuring, well, we are restructuring every day.
No, are you talking about personnel, or are you talking about other matters?
Personnel.
I don't know the answer to that yet, and it will unfold. As it unfolds, I'll say more. I would like to say at this point, looking at the salaries of all the employees in the current IT department, there's a big gap. I would like to see those numbers closer together. So if I have a network person at this building, I'd like to see them approximate same salary as sheriff's office. There's some adjustments that could be made there, absolutely.
So if I understand this correctly, this is still the very beginning phases of discovery still. Just trying to figure out what it is exactly we can combine. The first thing that you've identified is the disaster recovery plan, and then the network diagram that doesn't exist with it. It really needs to be there foundationally before you move forward. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess what I was anticipating, and maybe my expectations were unrealistic at this point in time, was that you would have a plan of how you consolidate services and what services could be consolidated. So what you're saying, if I understand it correctly, is you're not quite there.
Well, email is the biggest thing.
Okay.
And so we're talking about doing that, and when we do the email, it's going to not only bring those services together, but also document retention, content management. Until we have that email piece, then we're not able to move with document retention or content management.
They would have to change it, email addresses.
Email addresses will be transparent to them. There are also several things that we have incorporated in this email system that don't exist over there. For instance, when someone leaves the county, I've written a routine that folds in with our email system that initiates in the HR department. They say this employee has left, and it shoots out to specified people in security, in maintenance, in IT. So those accounts get shut down with special instructions on some people. You need to save this file, need to save these files, put this on retention for this long, and it sprays out so that people are eliminated from the system, whether that be physical elimination, card access, passwords, etc. The system in place for the county administration building and all of our offices currently, that sprays out, and we're ensured that everyone, once they leave, they are secured outside of the system. That is not in place over there. That would be why we see email addresses that are 2 years old, and a person hasn't been around for 2 years in the system at the sheriff's office.
Also, built into the disaster recovery plan is, would be our ability to manage their backups. Because currently, the backups are failing, the times are lapsing, so they're starting a backup. By the time they're backing up a file, and that's finished, there's been changes to that file, so it's actually out of date already. So built into the disaster recovery, we would be able to then manage that. So that'd be another version of services. Because, you know, as Scott had said, you know, we're still in the discovery phase, but as the things that are on the table right now are the most important, just to make sure that they're stable and also able to recover should there be, you know, some sort of an issue. Because currently, if something would go wrong, depending on what that may be, they might be dealing with some old history there. So that's another thing that's built into the backup.
So they haven't been doing backup though, or if they're the backup system, there hasn't been the backup systems there, adequate backup systems, I guess. Are we really merging anything, or are we really basically creating a foundation for which we can back up the information?
We would be merging in one sense that we would be leveraging the technology that we're using here to then incorporate their backups.
Okay.
The backups would still exist there, but they would be using our technology at a certain level, and we could then manage that, so it'd be a lot more effective.
Okay, thank you.
Do they need to have a separate system, separate backup from, why can't we just have one system, one, I'm gonna just say server for all the data from their department and our covering?
When the fiber is completed, we'll be able to do that.
And we have no connection to that building right now, so even just us to manage it, we would be utilizing VPN technology through our firewalls to do that because of the fact that we have no direct connection. I'm pretty sure that once there is a direct connection, we would end up at some level swallowing a number of their servers would then just go away because we would have the ability to then bring them on board here and utilize some of the same servers.
So that connectivity will happen after August 30th, 2013, when all of that VTOP is completed.
VTOP, yeah. That date will be when the fiber reaches the buildings.
And then we have to connect.
Then we have to connect,
Okay.
so maybe 4 months, 6 months after that, or it's after that.
Are you gonna put that into your FY14 budget then?
Yes.
So some of this money we may spend today would be wasted later. It'll only be a temporary solution.
It's a temporary solution. It's a very critical solution. Should there be a catastrophic failure, there's currently no plan into place to bring any of the equipment back.
So bottom line today, what are you recommending to the commissioners? What action do they have to take?
I'm recommending today that both of these quotes are addressed, that we find funding somehow. $31,896. And the CAS is $23,200.
Just to kind of go back on the issue as far as, doing any kind of work that might be, when we do the technical merge in a year plus, as being possibly not needed anymore. This is really just a foundation that we're going to build upon ourselves as time goes on. We've done our own disaster recovery here. We've leveraged some technologies, but from a technical perspective, we've done all the learning and the work ourselves, which we will then be able to do with them when the infrastructure is merged. So the money that's being spent now is the foundation. We will be building the infrastructure on top of that on our own. So it's never money wasted. We're simply giving them something that they currently don't have right now, and we're doing it so that we bring them up to a level that we would feel to be somewhat on par with what we've developed ourselves here. So
Is there a fine for not having the document retention in place? Should we lose it?
No. There's no fine.
Okay.
We're not in compliance.
But there are other consequences. There are other negative consequences. There may not be a fine, but there are other consequences for not being in compliance.
Absolutely. And Commissioner Hodge, to back up what John just mentioned, the money that we would be spending would not be washed out, because a lot of this, even though there may be some elimination of servers at some point, licenses for existing servers, which certainly servers may move here from the sheriff's office or from that data center, but all will not be eliminated. Licenses for those to even tie into the backup system, should we move the server, it still would be using that license. So this would still be applicable even once the high-speed fiber is connected, as well as our ultimate plan, once the fiber is in, is to have that backup center at the courthouse, so that we have backup centers off-site, as well as a hot site at the courthouse for 911 to transfer to. So we can put our backup center, the 911 center in the basement. If they need to pick up and leave, that data will be available for the I know, Commissioner Moore, I have not gone into fine details such as we've mentioned a lot of the top things, but ticketing systems, passwords, meters, machines, employee exceptions, procurement. I have a list of fine details and things that we're working on over there, but these foundation blocks need to be addressed, as well as we take care of the everyday matters. And we are in contact with the employees over there daily, as well as with other people daily, for other issues that are going on. And believe me, there are plenty, as well as at the detention center, new initiatives at the detention center. So I don't want to make light that there aren't day-to-day activities going on that have nothing to do with what we're talking about in these particular requests, but these are critical.
I understand. I think we saw the budget transfers last week, and it just raised the question of we hadn't had an update in terms of what was happening. Just seemed like a good time to do that, so I appreciate the information.
So what do you need to do at this time? Just continue your further investigation?
Yes, well,
Well, they need approval for this.
He's looking for funding for two expenditures.
I'll work with Scott on that. As I mentioned, Commissioners, there is an existing budget for IT functions in multiple departments prior to the transfer of authority, some of which have likely been expended, and many of which have not. And I'll work closely with Scott there. We'll also have some continued discussions about what it's going to take to do an adequate network diagram. It seems to me that would be a prescient tack. That's something that likely is contracted out anyway, has limited duration, and tells us where best to spend our short funding. It may potentially eliminate the need to do a short-term backup recovery. It may allow us to move into another direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to proposal for funding of the council auditor proposed position. Commissioner Blumell, that's something you were working on.
Yes, thank you, President Mullen. Treasurer Feely has identified a source of possible funding for the in-house auditor, and I'd like to have him speak on that.
Each year in the budget for salaries throughout the county, I'm going to use 2012 for example. We budgeted roughly $27,500,000 for payroll across the county. What we actually spent was about $27,127,000. So we had approximately $442,000 of savings in payroll. And that is primarily due to positions that are budgeted, but because of turnover or whatever, those are salary savings. for a period of time, 6 weeks or whatever, that you have an employee who isn't working there because they left county employment, and it takes you that long in order to be able to hire the next person to come in. So if you add all those people up throughout the entire county, last year we had $442,000 worth of savings. So I said that what we could do is at the end of the year, cap or quarterly or something like that, capture that budgeted salary that's unused throughout the various departments in the county, and you could use that to fund your position. And that way you haven't affected the actual operating budget of any department. Because I could not support that position of going in and taking money from operating departments to fund this, but this gives you a way of doing that without hurting anybody.
But it does take away from fund balance, because that money would go into fund balance at the end of the year if not used.
That's correct.
But it is money that's been allocated to the budget, so we wouldn't be adding to the budget.
That's correct.
Commissioner Mullen and Dunn, is this adequate to satisfy what you had requested?
I just have one question. I guess what type of, just general question, what, like a grade position and, just the official, the grade position of this. I mean, I don't know what the starting salary would be or where this person would fit into the scheme of county employment in terms of salary.
I think that's an HR question,
Okay.
not a question for the treasurer.
No, I understand, but that's one. How about a formal, should we get, can we get something formally in writing? I laid this out, but I guess really what it is what the official salary is. You've identified this money, but what officially this would pay, like a
Job position, that's what John said, description.
Right.
Yeah, we had previously talked about that, examples were given. Excuse me, I didn't get my notes out. And I believe, let me quickly look through here. I believe it says here MG2, but that's of course Delaware County. And from recollection, it was around, with benefits, a high number would be about 100,000. I don't have the sheets with the specific amounts. I guess my question is, what would our next steps be?
I actually have a counter proposal, and I brought this up during our budget work sessions, that the council needs the opportunity to be able to decide what resources they're going to need. Clearly, we put in the budget a council manager and an administrative person. But there's clearly going to be other needs that the council is going to require. And as I look at the spectrum of needs that might be required, that may be one of them, but there's certainly going to be a number of other things that I think that the council is going to require. So my counter proposal is that we take that $100,000 and set it aside for the council to be able to hire people on a contractual basis so that we don't have to pay benefits, but hire people on a contractual basis to serve those needs as those needs come up, as opposed to dedicate a source of funding, grow government, reduce our fund balance, and this is something that's actually a little bit more workable in my opinion.
I appreciate your counter proposal, but I still firmly believe that we need to have this position in place for us to utilize their research on the bills that are being proposed and providing audits at our request on certain departments and researching questions particular fiscal questions that we have. And we have gotten the opinions of Treasurer Feely, Winston Robinson, who worked in under Treasurer Howard, and I've had 3 constituents, Richard Boyle, Daniels, Dennis Brazina, had written letters, emails in support as well. I think it's a part of the checks and balances that is needed right now. I do agree we might identify additional positions that might be needed or additional support. Maybe an additional 100,000 set aside for maybe council representation on the council side. So I just think this is a position that we need on the council side to balance out the government.
I too have had a number of responses at your proposal, Commissioner Brummel. All have indicated that they don't feel it's necessary, and they are encouraging the council to really evaluate what their needs are. And it isn't that at some point it may need to be decided that this is a need, but at this point it hasn't been decided that this is a need. It's certainly something you have expressed a desire to fill. But I think there's going to be other needs for the council. And to lock in that amount for the council for a specific position where we don't really even have a general or a specific idea of what they want to do, that simply doesn't make sense to me.
I think we do have a specific idea of what we want.
You do, but I'm not sure the rest of the council does.
What an in-house auditor typically does.
Getting back to next steps, and I think Treasurer Feely's proposal is something I could probably support, so where would we go with this from here?
I'd like to, if we could formally just put something together with regard to the grade position, what the salary would be with benefits, so we can look at something formally, you know what I mean? Instead of just kind of verbally taking notes, you know what I mean? It's okay, look, this is what this scope, what this position, the grade position, what the benefits would be, what the official salary would be, what the scope of work would be, and we can kind of look at the official position of what we're officially dealing, you know, what's being proposed. And then how would this?
Yeah, I guess the first step, if the board wants to pursue this, is that you need to nail down the position description, salary, and then a budget amendment will be proposed.
So why don't we take a look and see what that would be the step to see, look at that fish, you know.
Okay, can I meet with Donna Nichols and we can draft something and mail it out?
Yeah,
to
send it to
everyone?
all the board, and
Okay.
Mr. Wine, and Mr. Feely, and Mr. Whiteford.
All right.
Okay, why don't we move on to commissioner items, Commissioner Dunn?
Sure. Last night, I think we all attended the Rural Counties Coalition meeting in Annapolis, and I thought it was very encouraging, and I'm sure we'll have more to say on this topic in weeks to come.
Thank you. Commissioner Brummel?
Yeah, there were a number of issues that were brought up at that meeting yesterday. One of them, very enlightening. Funkin Bolton had the attorneys that possibly representing Dorchester County. They had identified that the TMDL science could be faulty, probably faulty, because what was not taken into account was the pollution that is released during a storm event at the Conowingo Dam, and it has a huge impact on the bay. That and a number of issues of, you know, it's when we took our oath of office, it was to protect the rights and our citizens. And are we being complicit in the state's regulations that are taking away from our citizens' rights and their property rights, their constitutional rights? One of the things identified from Funkin Bolton was a letter sent out by EPA to the state of Maryland, October 5th, 2011, saying it wasn't required to have individual WIP plans for each county. And I thought that was very enlightening, that it's too much bureaucracy, too much investment, possibly on our part, in a plan that it's been pretty well identified that the science is faulty. So I look forward to investigating and seeing what our options are, and coming together as rural counties, how we will have strength in numbers and having our voices heard. One other thing, Richard Rothschild had identified, I believe the term was coordination, that there is a state or a federal law that says that the states are required to work with their local jurisdictions, and when that does not happen, to where the state is exercising too much authority over the local jurisdictions, the federal government can get involved. I'm very interested in that topic because I feel like it is a pattern that's happening in our state. So I was just very encouraged by what I heard yesterday.
Commissioner Moore.
I want to congratulate Rising Sun High School teacher Rhonda Holmes Blankenship. It's Friday night. She was named the Maryland Teacher of the Year. Previously, earlier in the year, she'd been named the Teacher of the Year by Cecil County Public Schools. And I believe this is the at least the third time that I know of in the last 6 or 7 years that CCPS has had the Teacher of the Year. So congratulations. I think it's wonderful. And I did attend the meeting last night in Annapolis of the Rural Counties Coalition. Was very encouraged. I thought it was a good meeting. I do have a question. Commissioner Brumel, you mentioned as part of that meeting that there was a meeting between you and Commissioner Mullen and Delegate Smeagol and Senator Pipkin about dredge spoil dumping. Had something to do with, it was a meeting with the Corps of Engineers. I wasn't aware of that meeting, and I was hoping that you could enlighten us and fill us in on what's going on.
Well, Mr. Wine, I guess Delegate Schmeigel and Senator Pipkin have been working with they've been talking to the Corps Engineers on dredge spoils, and they used this building, I guess that a week ago Monday, and Mr. Wine had let me know Friday afternoon that if I wanted to stop by, because I didn't know what they were talking about. And then I came in Monday morning, I guess it was what, 9 or 10 o'clock, and they were here with members of the Corps to talk about dredge spoils. And Commissioner Brumel came in. It wasn't advertised as an official meeting. I didn't know they were meeting, but Mr. Wine let me know as a courtesy.
Well, I've had several constituents approach me about this, and I think it's time that we set up a meeting with the Corps of Engineers, because certainly, I'm delighted that you all have part of that information, but I think all of us need to have that information so that we can adequately address our constituents' concerns.
Well, I think what they're waiting on is what I got out of the meeting is this study to be done, this groundwater
Well, this has
study.
been going on for a long
I
time.
know, and that, well,
Yeah.
that's the whole idea of Senator Pipkin and Delegate Schmeigel dealing with the Corps. We're waiting, and that's the thing, is they keep waiting on this report to come back from this, whatever the environmental company that's doing the study, and it just keeps getting pushed back. And I think that, from what I gathered, with Senator Pipkin and Delegate Schmeigel, we're getting frustrated because they keep waiting, and it just keeps getting dragged out. But to your point, I will speak to them about that and see what we can do about a follow-up meeting.
Yeah, I think it's important we all work together.
Well, I was very upset that we weren't told about that meeting, and I happened to hear about it from Schmeigel, and he had, Delegate Schmeigel, and happened to be able to attend, and a number of questions were raised in how this was moving forward. Certain information I'm not sure I can divulge because they had an agreement, Senator Pipkin and Schmeigel, Delegate Schmeigel, had with the either the Army Corps of Engineers or the people that were doing that study, and it was preliminarily released. But the findings that came out is something we need to have a meeting on as a Board of County Commissioners, as well as the Courthouse Point topic, which I'm not sure how much I can say. This is something, yes, I was surprised was going on without us being kept in the loop.
Al, can you make arrangements for a meeting then? Thank you.
First of all, I passed out to each commissioner a sample statement of opposition and a resolution in opposition. This is regarding question 7 on the ballot, the referendum question 7. And I believe that if passed, the additional gaming could be detrimental to our facility here in Perryville. So I would ask that the Board of Commissioners support a statement of opposition or a resolution that would encourage our citizens not to support it, but to say no to question 7. And the reasons laid out are within that resolution and statement of opposition. It's one or the other, or if you choose, you can do none. But I think it's in our best interest to support our facility here in Perryville and not let their business be diverted to other casinos. And quite frankly, I think it was a bad deal that was struck during the special session, and I think it should be come back to the legislators for reconsideration and redoing it. It was just done poorly. So I would like to have some direction provided to our citizens so they understand the question, and I think it's spelled out in the resolution that you see before you. So I would ask for us to support some type of resolution or statement of opposition.
Did you put this together?
No, I did not. It was provided to me.
Okay.
So it could be modified.
No, that's fine. I just didn't know.
This is just a sample for discussion purposes, and it certainly could be modified to suit the commissioner's objectives.
All right, and you look for like a county resolution?
Yes. Yes. This is a non-binding, just informational purposes.
Okay, no, that's cool. I just double check.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
No, I'm not done.
Oh,
Sorry. And I would like to have an answer, yes or no, so I'm making a motion for consideration whether we want to look at this at our next public meeting or just make this an informal
Everybody okay with
recommendation.
Well,
some version of this or the whole thing?
Can we have a week to
Yeah.
review?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, this question 7, the table gaming, expanded gaming, it wouldn't apply to Perryville?
Question 7 includes table games at all facilities, and it would knock that out. You would not be able to have table games. If you oppose 7, if you oppose question 7, there would be no table games at any facility.
But if it passes, table games would be everywhere.
Yes.
And you have the Prince George's site too.
There would be an additional facility. There would be an additional facility and table games at all.
So it's kind of intertwined, is the question.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm gonna have further discussion on this.
Why don't we
with
do
you.
that and follow up with you on that?
Could we at least put this on the agenda for next week
Yes.
and the 16th?
I see.
Potentially for the 16th.
Okay, that's fine. I'm okay with it. Is the rest of the board okay?
Mhm.
What you want? Okay.
Okay, now, I also, all the 5 county commissioners attended the meeting last night that went from 6 to 9 plus, and I think we got a lot accomplished. The Rural County Coalition got formally organized. They finally adopted bylaws, and we elected a chairman, who happens to be Mike McKay from Allegheny County. There was a discussion about where we're going to go. There was a presentation by Funk and Bolton, and Commissioner Brummel alluded to it. Now, I would go one step further, because I would say that I would like us to join in with their effort with Dorchester. I think that Dorchester County is committed, and they're going to move forward. They would like to have the support of other counties, both just in numbers and in dollars. And I would ask that we, the county commissioners, approve a resolution that we will join that group, not the Rural Coalition, but with Spunk and Bolton to move forward with this. Now, I look at it this, we have a choice. We can go ahead and just blindly spend $600 million, or that I believe is based on faulty science and all kinds of bad business. And, or we can spend a little bit of money and make sure that it's correct and make sure that we're making that investment in a sound way. And certainly, I want to show to the government that, or the governor, that we should be pushing back a little bit, because I just don't believe that making this investment is a wise use of our money right now. And so, I think that we should join this effort, and I'm willing to spend the money because I think it's a good investment. It's $600 million, or you know, they proposed a maximum of 30,000. Could be less to further this on. It's obviously that Pumpkin Bolton has done their research, they've done their analysis, and they have an argument that needs to be looked at further.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Al, since he was at the meeting, that if we could maybe put that on for next Tuesday somehow, we can talk about the next steps on how to support this effort. I think all of us, I think everybody in the room was pretty much, it was a good presentation overall from Pumpkin Bolton about this whole TNDL, flawed science, and not taking into account the Conowingo Dam and the sediment and all those other issues.
So I'm suggesting that we take action.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm okay with that.
Before we do that, and I'm not opposed to the concept at all, but I think we need to do our due diligence on what is being proposed as part of that $30,000. From what I read, it wasn't a maximum of $30,000. In fact, what was said was that's the first step, and then we'll see where we go from there. So I think that we need a little bit more clarification on that. And also, one of the comments was that is this something that should be specifically geared toward the TMDL issue? I mean, you know, or the WIP issue, or should it be expanded? I'm not sure. I didn't get a complete sense of where Dorchester County was going with that. They were ready to move forward on that specific issue with Pumpkin Bolton, and they're just asking other counties to join with them, or if they had been truly fleshed out, what it was they're going to have Pumpkin Bolton do for them.
And that's what I remember as well. We need to wait. The TMDL issue, the tier map, the WIP, those are, Pumpkin Bolton said this was specifically geared to the TMDL issue. The 30,000, I thought they were assuming possibly 10 participants with an overall cost of 300,000 divided by 10 would be 30,000 for each county. I know that there's an email that will be going out from the Rural County Coalition asking what is the will of the counties regarding the tier map, in whether they, just asking where they're at with that. We need to, I think it's going to take just a week or two of developing, getting feedback from the other counties of where they're at. I think it will be a strong message for Cecil County to say that we're willing to do this, and it will help other counties to get on board as well. But I think we need about a week or two before we can make that commitment.
For the public's purpose, it was very interesting last night. There was actually one county that has not even looked at their tier map yet. They actually haven't done it. And the law had said they want, or MDP wanted the tier maps by October 1st in order for them to give comments back to the counties. And Frederick County, at least one county, has not even done that yet. I just found that kind of interesting. So I think counties are still kind of all over the map in terms of their tier map and how they're going to address it, if they're going to address it.
Okay, well, my point is, I think this is a no-brainer. We can do our due diligence, and if you want due diligence done, who's going to do it and when?
I'd like Al to spearhead that, if you would.
Okay. One last comment, and this is regarding the internal auditor. I'm not buying into it at all under any circumstances, because it hasn't been proven to me that it's a necessary position at this point in time. When and if we turn to charter and we get into it and we're working through it, and it becomes necessary, then I will support it. And I certainly said last meeting that I fully support having the resources to have what I call a whole stable of experts, subject matter experts, that can help the council make good decisions. And that includes attorneys, professionals of all sorts, including CPAs, auditors, engineers, or what have you, that we need to get the information that we need to make those good decisions. I think it's premature at this time to fund one position that it's not known that it'll be necessary. The fact is that I do believe that we will need resources, so I support Terry Moore's effort to put money into the budget to allow the council to fund those consultants and entities that we're gonna need to do good work. But to fund just one position for a full-time position that is really not known how necessary it'll be is just way too premature.
Commissioner Hodge, if you want to make a motion to set aside money for the consultants, for the resources, I would support that as well.
Well, you can get specifics, but I don't think commissioner items is the place to do
Right,
that.
no, I'm not proposing that, I just, in lieu of hiring an internal auditor, I think that we should put resources in, that if it becomes necessary, we may hire that internal auditor or an attorney or others. But right now, just to focus on one position that has not necessarily been proven the need for is just not necessary.
Well, I agree that we may need that, the counselors, the attorneys, the resources on the council side. So, you know, if there are other resources that's still a valid, point to make, to, request funding for those resources.
And in closing, I also attended the Rural County Coalition and agree with what's been said. So, with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn this morning.
So moved.
Wait a second.